Okay, I think we're ready to get started. Thank you everyone for joining. My name is Ben Pinkerton. I'm the Director of Product Marketing at Vidyo, and I'm going to be joined today by Sachin Hegde, our developer evangelist at Vidyo. This is the first in a series of webinars that we're going to be conducting to just kind of help orient people and get them started developing their apps using the Vidyo.io developer platform.
So to start off, the goal of our webinar today is really Vidyo.io 101, where we want to introduce our platform to you, help you get started with building your first application with Vidyo.io, address any early on questions on how to integrate, and if there are any what platforms we support, and address anything that might hinder you from getting started. And for future, we're going to take on a series of webinars where we'll deep dive into more tough topics. And we're looking forward to getting questions from you so that we know which topics are for more high value, which topics you would like us to dive in further. So basically Vidyo.io, if you haven't tried it out already, it's basically a communication platform as a service where using our SDK, you can build applications that have high performance, high quality, multi-conference video communications built in. So if you're building an application and you want to have any form of video communication built in, that could be a one-on-one video communication, something like, say you're building telehealth or a consumer customer service kind of application, or it could be a one-to-many, where something like someone is presenting an e-learning experience, or even if you're building a many-to-many kind of scenario where you have a virtual room, virtual meeting, you have multiple people joining in with video and audio capabilities. Vidyo.io makes this process of building this application very, very easy. It takes away all the signaling, all the backend requirements, all the network management, everything. It takes care of all of that for your application, and all you need to do is build a few API calls. So a typical architecture of your application will look very simple. You can choose a platform of your whatever you favor. You can choose a platform that works for your customers, and the Vidyo Client SDK supports all these major platforms, and you can easily integrate your application with it. So, for example, say you're building a mobile application, you're building a iOS or an Android application, and you want to build something like FaceTime within your application. You don't want your user or customers to go out of your application to make a call, or you might have a scenario where you don't want to expose their actual personal numbers. You want to have a built-in experience, a fluid flow from your application to a video connection. All you need to do is download our Vidyo Client SDK for your corresponding, say, for example, iOS SDK, and integrate it with your application and make a few calls. The SDK on your application's behalf will actually talk to our Vidyo.io cloud and make all the signaling calls, set up the room, set up the virtual room, and all you need to do is connect, and you'll be presented with the video of yourself and your other participants. So I'd like to show you of basically a chart of which platforms we support. As you can see, in terms of web browser, we support all major web browsers, like including WebRTC support. We have plugins for IE. We have WebRTC support for Chrome, Firefox. Basically, all you need to do is write your application in JavaScript and integrate with our SDK. I'll dig into a bit further on how that happens and how that interaction happens further in our presentation. We support Windows 7 and onwards. If you're building any application on the Windows platform, so we right now have C. We will soon have C# coming through as well. You can use Visual Studio to build your application. And on macOS and iOS, you can use Xcode. We support El Capitan and onwards. And on Android, we support KitKat. I think 4.4 is KitKat and onwards. And it works really well with the Android Studio as well. So all this information along with the SDK and quick start guides is available at our developer.vidyo.io platform. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch the screens to show how our platform looks like. So say you're a new user for our platform and you want to build, you want to integrate with Vidyo.io. All you need to do is come to our website, Vidyo.io. Signing up is absolutely free. You don't need to enter your credit card information or anything like that. We really want to make this a simple and straightforward experience for you to try out our platform. Really believe we have one of the best technologies, one of our best scalable technologies in the market, and we want to make it very easy for you to integrate your application with our platform. So all you need to do is say you come to Vidyo.io. If you've never signed in, you'll see a sign up button over here. All you need to do is enter your valid email address, your name, a few more details, and sign up. You'll get a link in your email and you'll be able to log in. So here I've signed in already. Once you sign in, you can go to your account. You can see a few account information. You can see, you can enter all this later. But the key over here is your dashboard, right? So when you sign up, initially we'll give you 4,000 minutes for free. So you do plenty of minutes to try out how the platform works. After that, we'll create a default application for you. The application ID is shown up over here. You'll be assigned a developer key. Make sure that you keep this key secure and private. I'm going to regenerate right after the call. So if you think that your developer key has been exposed, we recommend keeping it private and regenerating and using a different one. The reason behind this is your developer key is what you'll use to connect to our platform, and we'll bill you accordingly. So you want to ensure that this is secure, and we'll talk more about that further on. You can also go to our downloads page over here, which shows you how to, which basically gives all the packages that you need to download. So if you're developing, say, a Windows application, you can click on the Windows package over here and download our Windows SDK. Similarly for Mac or the web, just come over here and download it. So putting this all together, so how does your application look like, right? So the one thing I'd like to, the reason I put this up is to highlight some interactions of your backend with our backend. So let's take a case study, for example, right? Say you're building a simple application where it could be a chat application. So you have building a group chat application which is going to escalate to video. What you'll do is you'll build your application. Say it's built say you have a web page, you have a web app, you use JavaScript or Angular or whatever you prefer, and you integrate with our web package. You can download our sample. You can see how the JavaScript is linked to your an HTML page. You'll see how that gets downloaded, and you'll see how a call is being done. So your typical flow will be you'll integrate it, and our SDK will talk to our Vidyo.io. One important key aspect that we use is token generation, is a token to connect a call. And what is a token? Token is basically a temporary credential, authentication credential that's used by our system to know that who's making the call. So your application will basically represent you. So when you, as a developer, sign up with Vidyo.io, you'll have a developer portal. You'll have your usage minutes, and depending on how much minutes you want to use, you'll probably have a subscription plan saying these very minutes. Now we need to authenticate when an application tries to connect with the Vidyo.io backend, we need to ensure that this is an authenticated user. To make it easy to make this an easy process, we've taken away the need for the user or your application to sign into anything and maintain a session and all that. So you don't need to do any of that. what you need to do is basically generate a token and pass that token to a background. The token is basically an alphanumeric string that you pass in a function method. So as long as a valid token is passed to our background, we'll know by the token, we'll know which developer account this is linked to, and the connection will succeed. I'll even show you how to generate a token. We do recommend that you generate this token on your application server. The reason behind this is a token is generated basically by a few parameters. Once it will say which application, it will tell which user is joining, so it will be a username. It will tell how long the token is valid for. So if you're joining a call, you want to generate a token valid for say 10 minutes or an hour. So after that hour, the token becomes invalid and nobody else can use it. So even if the token is leaked out, after an hour, nobody will care about it. So it will give you'll have an expiration time for it. And then you'll sign it with your developer key. Since you sign it with your developer key, we don't want you to expose your developer key on say a web app, right? You don't want to, on the client end, you don't want to expose that. You don't want somebody to read through your JavaScript and find your developer key. On a native end, you could maybe hide it a bit, do a better job hiding it, but it's just more secure if you save your developer key on your server. That way, when you sign it and you pass the token back to your application, the token is far less valuable, and even if something gets hacked, it's not a big deal. So that's why we recommend creating the token on your application server. We have a few scripts on how to create a token. We have Python, C#, and all other languages as well. So I'll show you how that gets done as well further on. So moving back to the flow, now our application has a link to our video client SDK. It wants to connect to a call. It says, hey, give me a valid token. You get a token back and you say connect to my call, and that's all you need, and your connection is done. You're in a video room. Vidyo.io keeps track of the usage, and you can go back to the developer portal and see what's going on. Coming to some key features. So Vidyo.io works really well and it has really performance. So one of the key benefits of using our platform is that our SDK is built natively for each platform. So when you're running on iOS, for example, or on Android, the native framework is quite different. So Vidyo.io's SDK works with the native OS. It takes care of all the network connection. It takes care of what kind of resource management is happening, right? So for example, if one of your client is running on a high-end desktop machine with great network connection, and a great camera, they can probably render and send out 1080p. They can render like a 1080p display. They can have multiple, the CPU is powerful, and they can have multiple video rendering at the same time. While on your other client might be on a mobile phone where it's a smaller screen, the CPU is resources much less. They're probably running on a battery and on a mobile connection, so they won't be able to get the same quality of videos down on their end and render it. But because we have a backend server that takes care of the network solution, because we have a native build SDK that understands the system really well, the platform, the SDK takes care of all this and renders the best performance out. So that's one of the key features you got to realize that you get from Vidyo.io. But from an application development perspective, it's very straightforward. We have we have the API built such that it's similar across these platforms. So although we'll adhere to the coding style and guidelines for the particular platform, the application logic to actually make these connections is straightforward and exactly the same across platforms. So your learning curve, once you know how to build a Vidyo.io solution for one platform, your learning curve is done. You can go ahead and build it for the other platforms as long as you know how to build it on the platforms. Like if you're an iOS developer and an Android developer, once you know Vidyo.io, you can build it across platforms, no problem. So that's one of the key benefits of our platform. Other thing is we also take care of all the device controls for you, device management for you. So you don't have to worry about which camera get in the system. You don't have to worry about if there's a USB, if it's a built-in camera, how many mics are connected. You don't have to worry about that. The device management is done for you. If you choose to build a UI where the user can choose different devices, you can just query at SDK. Will tell you which devices are there. You can show that out the user and the user can select the one they want. You can either choose our composite layout, we'll do the layout for you. You don't have to worry about drawing different users and figure out who goes where. We'll do it for you. But if you want to build some custom layout where you say, hey, I want to show one louder speaker over here, the presenter over here, I want to show only two other participants, some other view and screen, then you can absolutely do that. We also provide custom layout options as well. We also provide other things like window share, which is like, so if you want to share any content, we provide that. We provide multi-group chat. So once you're in the room, you can chat with all the participants in the room. We have a pretty straightforward API where you can get messages in, you can send messages out, and this messages are broadcast to everybody in the group chat. It's a very simple API, and you can choose to listen to those events. Other important point to bring up is the audio quality. We support echo cancellation, so that's another thing you don't have to worry about. So once you make a call, you don't have to worry about the echo issues. You don't need to worry about the devices. So that's another benefit. All right, so let's get started. How do you get started to actually build this application? Let's do a walkthrough on if you're a new user, how do I go ahead and actually say get started and say join a room? So first off, as I said before, you will sign up on a Developer.io portal page, create an account. You can look at the dashboard. You can see the application ID and developer key. Keep those two handy because you'll create a token, and then you can download. The next step is you download the SDK of your choice. Again, I'll go back and show you the page where that is, but you download your SDK. Once you download the SDK, you actually get quite a lot of things in it. We have all the libraries included. We have a sample application included, the Video Connector app. So say if you download the OS SDK, there will be a Xcode project for already ready-to-go Video Connector sample, which you can run and deploy right away. This is also similarly for iOS or web or Android or whatever. So we have project samples included in that. And also there's the documentation also included within it. So you can even browse the documentation over there. And next, why don't I show you on my screen exactly where we have all this. All right. So coming back to our page, here's where you can download all the SDKs. Here is where all the documentation is. And the key concept of token generation is explained right here. We can go through it and look at it in detail. And one thing I'd like to point out is that we have some sample. When I said you need to sign your this and create the token, you might ask, okay, how do I sign this? How do I go about doing this? We already have samples for that. We have some Python scripts. We have a Java sample, Node.js, C#, all included over here. So feel free to download this over here. It's just a few function calls. You can include it within your script. You can go use this script as is, all up to you. So I have actually, let me share my terminal screen over here. So what I'm going to do now is I actually have downloaded the generate token Python script already on my machine. What I'd like to do is show you how this token is generated. So I'm going to use Python 3. I'm going to use our generate token script. First thing you pass in is the key. Now, what is this developer key? Let me share my entire screen, make things a bit more easier. So if I come back to my page and I go to my dashboard, I have all my important keys. What you need is your developer key. So I'm going to copy this developer key out here and pass it to my script, saying, okay, this is the developer keys. I might have multiple applications. So you can you can have different tokens for different applications. In fact, you need to say which application you're talking about. So this is my app ID, which is generated as well. Then I have my username. So note that this user is different from the display name of that's usually shown on the screen. So those two are different fields. But right now, I'm just going to say it's going to be me. And then I say how long this token is valid. So maybe say for around 100 seconds or 1,000 seconds. So when I say enter, it's all set up over here. You get the token generated right here. As straightforward as that. So you can include this. You can feel free to do this script. Take a look at it. Look at the function calls that's made in. So you can integrate it with the project. So here I've got my token. No, it's everything is valid. So it seems like it has equal to in the end. So that's part of the make sure that you include all of this and pass it within your function. One way of actually seeing how this runs is in our developer portal, we already have a ready-to-go demo link. So you could choose to download our SDKs and run the sample, but if you want to try something really quickly within our Vidyo.io portal, as soon as you create an account, you can actually run a demo right away. So you can go to the developer page, click on the link, and there's a launch button here, and which will give you an option of joining. Since I'm running Safari, it's saying join my plugin or the app, and I can say I'm going to join via app away. I have my connector. It repopulates the host, which is all the required fields, host being Vidyo.io page. So this will remain the same. You don't have to change this. The token is the second parameter. We just created one over here. But if you click on the demo link, it will auto create one for you. So you can go ahead and use the one, or you can use the one recently used. You can give any name. So I'm going to say, hey, this is name Sachin over here. And the last, one of the important parameters is the resource ID. What this resource ID means is if it is which virtual room you go join. So if you are building a video conference app and you want all your participants to be in the same room, then you have to give the same resource ID. So if here I'm calling it demo room, and once I pass that in, and I can simply just go ahead and click a connect call and join this virtual room right away. So it's as straightforward as that. You can see Ben is beat me and is already in the room. So we'll go ahead and have a conversation right there. Hey, Ben, thanks for being there. Alrighty, so as simple as that. Coming back to our presentation. All right, so that was pretty much the steps to start with the demo. Digging further in our token, so just to reiterate what our token was, we basically used our username, the application ID, and gave it an expiration time and signed it by our developer key. That's all that it is. And this is and then you create a token, and we use this token to authenticate the user on your behalf. To ensure that when you create this, the username is unique. So each user joining in, when you talk for them, ensure that you use the username. It could just be a pointer in your system for that particular user. It's not the same as the display name. You can have, it's like your alias, right? It has to be something unique. But ensure you don't put the @ or anything like that, any special characters. You need to put only the usual alphanumeric strings like A to Z and numbers. So the token generators are provided. You can download from our website. And again, we recommend that you generate these tokens on your backend, not exposing your developer key in your client end application, just to keep it secure. And as we saw, it's pretty straightforward. All you need to do, you needed those parameters, and you can say click, and you can connect the call, and lo and behold, your video conference is started. Excuse me. All right. So joining Vidyo.io is really straightforward. The calls are really straightforward, and but I want to highlight two main calls that happen when you join, when you work with our system. These are two main calls you'll have to make to join a room, and it's pretty straightforward. One is the constructor, and other is the connect call. So when you integrate with our system and you have the video client SDK and the video client object, the first thing we will do to join a call is create an object called video connect. And in this connector initialize method, you pass in certain key parameters, something like you pass in what room you pass in where you want the video SDK to render the video, right? So I'm going to go to the next slide and show what I'm talking about. So basically, when you create a video connector object, the first parameter that you pass is view ID. This is the view object where the video is going to render. So if there's an HTML page, you pass in the ID saying, okay, please draw all the video related stuff on this div. If it's an iOS application, you'll pass in the view ID, the view controller view ID, saying that, hey, this is my view. Draw the video stuff on that, and that the SDK will take care of. So it's as straightforward as that, just the ID. Second is the style. You can use the default style. We're going to add more styles in our future releases, but right now you have options of having like a film strip style or a picture or basically a default layout tile style. The next parameter is the remote participants. So what this number does is it tells the video client how many maximum participants you want to render on the screen. So for example, say your application is a mobile device. In that case, you probably don't want to show 16 participants on the screen at one time. Even if the network supports it and even if your CPU supports it, it might not be a good user experience anyways. So you can tell a system saying, hey, just show 4, maximum 4. I don't want to show more than 4 remote participants at one time. So know that the keyword is maximum. So even if you say, okay, 100, that doesn't mean that we will show you 100 on the screen at that time, because most likely your network might not be able to support 100 video streams coming through efficiently. Your CPU might not be able to render 100 streams efficiently. So it will be depending upon what your system can handle and what you set as the maximum. We'll honor that and render that. Next is the log filter. What log levels you want to set. If you want to get more detail, you can do that. Next is the log file name. You can basically give you should probably pass the complete string of where you want the complete file path of where you want your logs to be saved. If you leave it blank, we'll save it to the default path where, depending on the system, wherever it's writable, the default path over there. And the last field is the user data, which you can use to note if you have if you want to pass in some user-related data in your own data. So we don't use this field. So this is the video initial constructor call. And when you call this, since we have the place to render and we will take care of initializing all the local cameras and everything, we will go ahead and display the self preview. So as soon as you call the constructor and you tell us where to draw, we will draw the self preview on that screen and you can see yourself. You've not joined any room yet. You've just set up and you can see yourself and you set everything up beforehand. And usually we do this because we've experienced that people who want to join a conference call, they like to see themselves before joining the call. So this actually helps with that a lot. So you get a self preview, you can see how you're looking, you can ensure you don't have anything embarrassing behind you. And then when you're good to go, the user can go ahead and say, connect a call, in which case you will then call the video connector connect method. Over here, you'll tell which host you want to connect to. It's going to be most likely Vidyo.io. Then you're going to pass in your token, which we just showed how we generate. Then you're going to pass in a display name for that user. So this can be different from the username, and this could be, it could be the same for everybody. So this is just names up under the person's video tile. And then the most important resource ID. You need to ensure that everybody who wants to be in the same video conference has the same resource ID. So earlier when I joined demo room, Ben had also joined the demo room, and that's why we were in the same conference and we connect right away. And after that, the next 3 are basic callback functions to let your system know that if there's a success, if there's a failure, we'll tell you why it failed, and if you get disconnected. This disconnection could be user initiated, or the disconnection could be the network initiated, or whatever. So you have callback set up. So that's basically it, and that's all you need to join a room. If you want to do something more exciting within your conference, like get chat or get events, then all of that is also supported. But to join a room, this is it. You with just these 2 function calls, you're in. You have multi-party video conference running right away. So yeah, that's about it. So this was the basic Vidyo.io one-on-one to get you started to build your first video application. And I would recommend everybody to try it out. I would recommend everybody to go to our website and see our API reference guide and our documentation to get a more further deeper understanding. And invite Ben back in. And if you guys have any questions, then please post it.
Thanks, Sachin. Great stuff. So just a reminder, everyone, if you have any questions and you haven't submitted them already, please feel free to do so now in the Q&A section of the webinar tool there. So just enter in your question and click submit, and we can see those on the back end to answer those. And Sachin, during your session, I was watching a number of questions that flowed in. So why don't we dive into those and start going through them. Okay, so the first question we got, it says, if I build a WebRTC client using Vidyo.io, will it be able to communicate with the mobile client, say on Android or some other type of platform or device?
Yes, absolutely. So the great part about Vidyo.io is we take care of the back. We take care of the WebRTC client as well as the native client. So if your application is running on a web browser on a particular client and you don't even have to worry about WebRTC, to be honest. We will take care of if the browser supports WebRTC or not. We will take care of that for you. You don't have to worry about any of the underlying WebRTC calls. You don't have to make the connection. You don't have to worry about the devices, permissions, and any of that. Vidyo will take care of that. And as long as so you interact with the same API set in every platform. So it's the same connect call. It's the same constructor call. So as long as you connect the same room from your WebRTC client and from your mobile client, as long as it's the same room, you'll be connected in the same, and you'll have your chat going on, video chat going on.
Okay. Here's another question that came in. They were asking, do we need a turn server? I presume, for firewall traversal, do they need to stand up their own turn server or stun server, that sort of thing?
No. I think the Vidyo.io platform will take care of this for you as well. In fact, if depending on the firewall situation, if the TCP connection fails, we also fall back to UDP. So again, you don't have to worry about setting up a turn server either.
Yeah, I think the key there is we are trying to provide everything for you so that you really don't even have to get involved into sort of the inner workings of the video infrastructure, where we kind of handle all that for you so you can just focus on building the application itself.
Correct.
Okay, another question that came in was asking how can I integrate Vidyo.io into Sage CRM 7.3 so that I can make calls to contacts directly through Sage CRM?
That's a good question. So I'm not familiar a lot with Sage and CRM, but the key being is as long as you're using one of the platforms, say, I'm not sure if it's a JavaScript kind of application or not. Vidyo.io doesn't do any user management for you. So the idea is you will integrate our SDK with your existing user base. So if you have a particular, if you already have a particular user base, you'll probably link when you do a connect call and you pass in the username parameters, you'll use the same ones. In terms of providing a direct call mechanism, we don't have direct call in our current implementation yet. We are working on it for future releases. But what you could do is build logic within your own application where if you want to do a direct call, you basically ensure that the two-person join into the same room. So as the user, they don't have to know what room was created. It's just an alphanumeric string, right? So you can build in a logic within your application saying when you want to say connect, you say, okay, this person has gone into this room. You notify the room ID to the other person as well, and they can join in the same room. So that logic, you'll have to build in that logic within your application, at least for now.
I've seen a similar application. It wasn't a CRM application, but the same concept was there, where they wanted to connect to their customers through their management platform. And the way that they implemented it, that I saw, essentially they would have their platform, which in your case would be Sage CRM, simply send out an email that had a click to connect link in it. And then from there, both parties would click that link and be able to join into the same, meeting that way. So that's the way I've seen it done. We've also have people that have done more like customer engagement type applications where, you put a link on like a web page where they can click, and then that signals on the back end to an agent that someone wants to talk to them. They built in some queuing logic and so forth, and then from there, once the agent picks up, the call's initiated and connected.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, another question we have, how do I make sure two users are connected to the same meeting, which I think you answered, but maybe you just want to reiterate that. And then there was a second part to the question. How do I prevent others I don't want to join from connecting to that meeting or my meeting?
That's a interesting way of looking at it. So the first part, yes, I think I've kind of mentioned, but ensure a couple of things, right? That not only that your resource ID is the same, right? That was the obvious one. So you ensure that we all are going to the same room. So if you call this, we call it demo room, so me and Ben were in the same room. But also ensure that when you're creating the token, it's from the same, you're signing it from the same developer key. So if you have multiple accounts or if you have multiple apps, ensure that when you're generating the token, the two clients that want to join in, the token generation is done by the same app ID, by the same developer key. Because if it's signed by some say, the reason behind it is, say, if I'm developing my application and I create a room called demo room, Ben might be doing his own application somewhere else and he calls his room demo room as well. Now, these are separate companies and applications. We don't want them joining the same room. So it won't happen because the token that gets created is separate for these two users. So ensure that that's another thing, keep in mind. So in case you have multiple accounts or you have multiple applications, you're using the same app ID and the same developer key to sign the token. So as long as that's good to go and your resource ID is the same, you'll be in the same room. Now, the other aspect, you keep you don't want say you have multiple customers and you want to ensure that they don't join in the same room accidentally. That's interesting. And the way you can do that is the room name, the resource ID, is something your application should generate and not your user should not pass in. So for the demo purpose here, to make it convenient, we passed in the resource ID. I typed it in. But what we would recommend is within your application, you have certain logic on how this resource ID is created, right? So you ensure if it's something like it represents a room, like a physical room or something, then fine, you keep it consistent, you create it and everybody can go join that room. So this could be my Scrum meeting room and everybody can join in the Scrum meeting room. But if it's a bit more personal, you could keep it a bit more ad hoc, right? You can create a room just like you can attach some kind of ID to it, some kind of GUID to it, some kind of random string so that nobody else can guess that resource ID and it's only passed between, it's like a secret between two of your users. So you need to add in that logic.
Great. Here's an interesting question. They asked, does the token need to be valid for the whole duration of the call?
No, good question. As long as the token is valid while you're making the connect call, that's all we need. Once you're connected and in the room, even if the token has expired, you won't get kicked out of the room. And so that's why this helps you create really short-lived tokens, and you can pass them around that should be long enough so that you have enough time to just make the call. So if it's a 1-hour meeting and your token was just valid for 5 minutes, as long as the user joined in those first 5 minutes, they're good to go. They won't get kicked out. So if for some reason they do get kicked out, say network connection, they dropped out, they had to go in and come back in, then you'll need to create another token because if it's beyond that 5 minutes, it's not valid anymore.
Cool. All right. Here's a question, and I think I can answer this one. This is a commercial question. They ask, if I buy an amount of minutes and the limit is reached, does the service stop working, or can I continue using it and then I get the bill? So there's really two types of ways that you can buy Vidyo.io service. So first of all is through the self-service module, which is basically you sign up for an account, you can put in your credit card, and essentially what that subscription is, you get 6,500 minutes monthly, and those are use it or lose it minutes, if you will. But if you exceed 6,500 minutes, then what we do is keep track of how many minutes over 6,500 you used, and then that gets applied to your next month's renewal. So your service won't stop when you're using the system, even if you reach your 6,500 minutes. You just get charged at a rate of 1 cent per minute. Now we do have bulk pricing. So if you're anticipating a high volume application, you can contact one of our business development team, and they can talk to you about some different bulk pricing options. But essentially, the way those work is you prepay for a bundle of minutes, sort of like a prepaid calling card. And then as you start to reach the end of that bundle of minutes, we start sending you ample notifications so that you know that you're reaching the end and you need to renew or buy more minutes. So your application won't just instantly get shut off. That's not something we want to work. We provide a little bit of a grace period so that you have time to adapt and adjust, because we don't want to create a bad user experience. Okay. The next question, do an administrator need to create the resources or rooms ahead of the calls, or can you just name them on the fly?
You can pretty much name them on the fly. It's just a string, and it has to be, as we said, unique when you're joining the room with other participants. But you really don't need to do any kind of room management. So there is, you can choose to build your application such that before a connect call, you create a random string and you join. Just make sure that the person who wants to join the room also has the same room name. If you prefer having a list of predefined rooms, you could do that and not expose the user so that you can do your own management. That's absolutely fine. But from our end, there's no requirement. It's completely up to your use case.
Okay. Another question we have here, does the SDK have a configuration for any type of stereoscopic application like VR, virtual reality?
I don't think so. Ben, do you know if you've done more with VR?
Yeah, so this is actually a good question. To answer your question today, no, there's not something in place. I can tell you that the engineering team is looking at how we can apply the technology to certain AR and VR type applications. So if you have some specific questions or what you're trying to accomplish, we'd love to talk to you about that, just to understand what sort of requirements you might have, because that can help guide us and figure out the best approach we want to go in the future. There is some work being done to figure out what we want to do there, but that's it's not in the product today. Okay, another question here. This is an interesting one. Okay, if the user denies permission to use the camera, can we reprompt them for permission easily? I'm assuming this is in the context of like a WebRTC connection.
Excuse me. So yes, this is a good question, and it is a bit tricky. So it really depends upon the platform. There are certain platforms like, say, iOS, if the user denies permission, it's much harder to prompt them again. The user has to go back to the settings. So suppose you build an app and says it uses camera, and the user says, I don't want to put a camera to it on the prompt, so the OS, then you really can't do much about prompting it again. You can I think the camera load will fail. We won't have a self preview, so there is no way to you won't be able to prompt them again and say yes, but there is a way so that you get an error and you can say, hey, by the way, you've denied the camera usage, but the user will have to go back to the settings and apply it. Similarly for as well, you'll get an error for the local camera, but you won't be able to prompt it on their own. Then they go manually, so on the web browser, go to the settings over there and enable it manually. So that's really depends on what platform it is, and each platform has a slightly more secure or intentionally is more secure than the other. So prompting we won't be able to show that prompt again for allow, but we will be able to show a message saying that, hey, it happened because the user has disabled it.
Here's a question, a good one. If the bandwidth is very poor, can I continue the call with audio only automatically?
Absolutely. In fact, this is the thing we take care of for you. So depending on how well the resource, we have inbuilt resource managers for every native client. So if the resources are constrained and we can't do video, we'll start dropping the number of tiles. So instead of say from 4, we'll start seeing 3. We'll decrease the resolution a bit. But if it gets so bad, audio is the last that gets hit. So you have to probably go in like less than some KB per seconds for audio to drop. But video will drop, the audio will continue to work, and you won't get dropped off the call.
Yeah. And that happens automatically, right? There's nothing you need to build into your application to manage that. It happens with the SDK automatically.
Correct. That's correct.
Yeah. Here's an interesting question about layouts. So how would you go about popping out the video window to a separate window? This would be a web app, and ideally without a need to leave the room and rejoin the room on the pop-out window. Is this possible?
Interesting. So it's a web app. That's actually interesting. So if the initial connect itself is on the pop out, then it's much easier, because then you can do the connect call logic built in with the pop out. You can just ensure that you pass it's the right window div ID. If it is something that you've built, you're in the window and then you want to click a button and then pop out a different screen, that would be a bit harder, because you're telling the SDK that you want to draw the video somewhere else. And as of now, we don't have a straightforward method of doing that. You will, I think you will have to drop the call on that one. But I will get back to you on this. This is a very good point for our engineering team, because before you join the call, if you build it such that the pop-out happens before, it's not a problem. But if you're in a call, you're drawing the video in a particular window, and now you want to draw it somewhere else because it potentially has a different div ID, then that's a problem. If it's within the same iframe and that gets popped out and and then you change the size, again, no problems. So I think we recommend doing something like that. You build your video in a separate iframe and you have the same div ID, and that gets resized, but not like a separate window. If that makes sense.
Okay. But you do have the ability to customize where the different view IDs are rendered. So if you wanted to customize the layout, you can do that with the SDK. The question was just specifically if the window pops out and comes back in. Is that the issue?
Correct. So if you're doing something, if you're using the custom layout, and if you're doing something more, you're doing a more rigorous or a manual integration, then it's update. Then definitely you don't have to disconnect, because then what you'll do is you're going to say, I'm going to put this user on this particular div ID. I'm going to put this user on this view. So in that case, if you get popped out, you'll do is say, hey, I'm not going to put this person over here. I'm going to put that person over there. So you could go. That's actually a good point. You could choose to do a custom layout and then just manually put the users in a different div ID. The cases where you don't want to do custom, but you're using the default layout, but now suddenly you want to, resize. So if the pop-out usually happens, is the goal is the user wants to resize their window. So that's usually the case. So I would say that build it such that it's still in the same frame, same div ID, but you're not changing that if you're using the default layout.
Got it. Okay, here's another interesting question. Is there a possibility to extract the individual audio from the individual clients in order to send some audios to selected clients into the same room? For example, audio from user 1 just can hear from user 2, but not user 3, but keep all the videos. So it sounds like they want to have a multi-party layout, but then choose which audio streams are heard. I don't know. Do we have that level of?
We do not have that right now. That's a very interesting use case. We'd love to understand more about this use case, and we'll take this up with the engineering team. But as of now, you can switch the videos out manually. There's a custom layout, but you cannot choose your audio. So you cannot choose that on these which audio you're. The reason behind is we also, if we take care of the loudest. If a lot of people speaking, we take care of passing the right audio in the right place. So right now it's not customizable.
Yeah, that part of the audio algorithm, if I'm not mistaken, is also determining, who the active speakers are, and that's tied into the way that we prioritize the individual video streams. If, remember when Sachin was talking about the dynamic adaptation of the video, so we try to give priority to the most active speakers. Generally, you want to see them most. So that's one signal that we can use to say, give my video priority right now versus Sachin's because he's being passive. And so when you start to separate the audio streams that way, that might affect the algorithm. So that would be an interesting use case. We'd like to understand that better. A lot of great questions here, guys. Keep them coming. So here's another one, Sachin. For Android apps that run on wrappers like Crosswalk or Cordova, which basically show HTML plus JS pages, if we use the JS library, will the supported version of Android still be 4.4 plus?
Yes, we're working on a few samples for Cordova as well. So if you're interested, reach out to us and we'll share some of our samples for it. In fact, we'll post it. But yes, it'll still be Android 4.4 plus.
And I just want to add to that as well. There's especially on mobile devices, we have a native SDK. So it's not actually using the OS WebRTC capability in the browser. So we have a native SDK for the mobile devices that we've done a tremendous amount of tuning. It's our own codec, it's our own resource manager, and so forth. So, we would recommend that you go with the native SDK rather than just taking, like the inbuilt WebRTC in your mobile app and going with that. You'll get a much better, higher quality performance if you use the native SDK, because we can do a lot more by managing those streams and providing a higher quality experience. And that's right. More crucially on mobile because you have, typically a little bit more limited CPU, and also the bandwidth is inherently wireless, which is not as reliable as like a wired connection.
Right, that's a very good point. Yeah. So if you're especially starting fresh and building this application and you've not already invested heavily and you're trying to make a decision, then we'd really recommend going with the native route. You could even try it out and see the WebRTC, because with mobile, your users will hit constraints more often than the desktop. They will hit network constraints. They will hit resource constraints. Sometimes on mobile, some users have tons of applications running in the background and the CPU performance takes a hit. Some users don't have that many applications running in the background. The CPU can perform much better. So you really get much better experience if you use the native SDK.
Okay, we've got about 3 minutes left here till the top of the hour. So let's see if we can squeeze a couple more in here. What if the number of people in the room is larger than the defined remote participants variable?
Good question. So this basically, the remote participants tells you how many video you want to be rendered on the screen. So as Ben was hinting earlier, we have an algorithm which defines which ones are more relevant at which time, and it's tied to the audio. So say my remote participants are just say 3, and you have 20 people in the call, we will show the 3 most active participants on the screen. So if at a particular time ABC are more active and they're speaking, we'll show ABC. But if say XYZ start becoming more active and they start talking, then we'll start showing the videos of XYZ and move ABC out. So the Vidyo.io will take care of moving those tiles out and bringing them forward depending on which are more active, and that's tied to what kind of, if they're speaking and what kind of audio levels we're getting from them.
All right. Let's see. I'm trying to find another one we can squeeze in here. How would you go about creating a waiting room for a user while the agent connects? So I guess the idea is like a customer engagement type application where I click the button and I'm waiting for the person to join.
That's a good question. So I I think I would create a waiting room. So basically, you can have the person join in the room before anybody else joins. So if it depends of how many participants are there. So if it's a one-on-one scenario where, hey, I go into a room and I'm waiting, then my logic would be I would actually set everything up and even do the connection and create a resource ID unique to me. So if say if it's a doctor patient thing, right? So it's I'll create on a fly, I'll create Sachin Hegde room 1 or something like that, and I'll have me already joined in so that I can see myself, and I'll send a notification to my say if it's a doctor situation on our admin or agent who gets a notification saying user Sachin Hegde waiting in, and this is the resource ID Sachin Hegde room 1. That way is when that person chooses to join, they join that room and then they're joined. So I would build it such that you already set up one person and they're already in the room. Keep in mind, if you know that your application has a long wait period, maybe you wouldn't want to join the room right away, but add more logic, because you're actually get charged for, if you're an active room, you'll get charged for minutes, for those waiting minutes. So if you are concerned about that, then I would change the logic where you set it up that the actual connection has not happened until you have some communication in the background or on your backend which says both are ready, or the agent joins first and then the other person joins after that. So just keep that in mind. So once you join a room, you're basically using minutes for the conference.